Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tech Garage. In this episode, I'm going to be giving a quick tutorial on how to perform a pretty standard hard drive upgrade on an existing PC. Last week I was talking with a friend and they said they were running out of storage on their PC for installing games and other stuff. And I casually said, oh, hey, that's an easy upgrade. Anyone can do it. And there's YouTube videos out there that explain to you how to do it. And later I kind of thought about, well, how complex those steps might be for somebody that's never actually done anything in their computer. And thought, well, cool. Well, so let me go and look at the YouTube videos and let me check through a couple of them for them, and maybe something that I can recommend to them to watch. And I really didn't see anything that I thought covered all of the basics that really needed to be included in there for somebody who's had really never done this before. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about what types of hard drives you can install, as well as what you'll actually need to do within your computer and how to do it. Some of the things, computer cases are all a little different, so some of it you're still going to have to go through and figure out a little bit. But hopefully I can give you some tips on that. And then lastly, we'll talk about how to get Windows to recognize the drives once you've installed it. There's a couple of steps you'll actually have to do within Windows to actually enable using the drive. None of this stuff is very hard though, and it's all something that I really feel that even a complete beginner could step into and go ahead and do with complete success. So with that, let's get right into it. There's a couple of things that you're gonna need. One, of course, you're going to need a hard drive. Now, this is a hard drive that I happen to have as an extra from a build that I did recently. And so it's just a little, I don't even need to really install this. I've already got enough space on the computer I've got, but this is a 500 gig drive. The other thing you're going to need is a SATA cable. This is the box of screws that came with my case. And you may or may not have these screws available. You might have to find some screws. Screws come with the cases, but sometimes they may be hard to track down. Getting the right size screws is really important. There are other options. I mean, if you're not going to be moving it around, I hate to say this, you could duct tape it in there. I don't know if I want to recommend that, but really the idea is to secure it so that it's not going to bump around and get detangled. The best option though would be to find some screws. Screws are really cheap and you can get them on Amazon or somewhere else if you don't have. Depending on your case, and this is where things get a little tricky. You may have some nice thumb screws like this where you can remove the the fasteners. This case comes off real easy. It just folds out like that. And this gets you right in here. Now, where you install your hard drive is, that's maybe and I've got another set of thumb screws here. And these guys come right out also. And I think this is a little bit more of a traditional, oh, no, it's not. It also just folds out. And you can see back here, there's a lot more of a mess going on. And there's a whole lot of stuff that's all over the place here. This is, what typically a computer looks like. I am not the best at cable management, and so, this is what you get. I also put a bunch of LEDs in here, RGB lights, and so there's some extra wiring for that. So where do we want to put the hard drive? Well, first of all, let's just open this guy up. And you can see where I have my larger 3.5-inch drives that sit in here. This is clearly much too big to sit in these trays. They're not really designed for it. Let's see if I can get one of these screws to come out. It really wants to be in there tight. Well, we're just going to leave that in there for now. I don't even see that it has really screws that would fit for it. So what you'd want to do is just put mount it in here in theory, and you could mount it through into either of these screws here. But what's even better option would be these little mounting plates right here. So I think that's what we're going to go ahead and go with. And I haven't taken one of these out. So this guy comes out just like this. And then our hard drive, we'll just screw, see the holes line up right there. And so we can we'll mount that, and then it'll mount right back up here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. So real quick, I just found, right, say, a screw in my box of screws from the from my case, and let's give myself a little bit more room to work here. And we're just screwing these into this mounting plate here to mount this guy up. And when you screw in these screws, they don't need to be super tight. You know, this isn't, we're not driving a car around. These aren't going to be vibrating loose. What you don't want to do is screw them in too tight and then strip them out. And then you're going to have a problem getting things to really hold in place later. So you want to just nice and gentle, easy, you know. I'm not putting really any serious torque on there when I do that. Cool. Now, before we go any further, let's figure out what we want to do for power. So this is a modular power supply. All the power cables that come out of here, I sort of pre-selected when I put this together. So I may not actually have an extra power slot for this available right now. So let me look in here and try and figure that out. If I don't, what I'll have to do, I've got extra plugs for the power supply, and I'll have to go grab one of those, put it into the power supply, and route it back out. So that'll be a little extra work. If you don't have a modular power supply and you didn't, you know, pre-configure your setup to be just exactly the amount of power cords that you needed, you might not have this problem. All right, at this point, we're gonna pause and talk about how bad I am at making videos, because what happened was I ended up in this state where I was turning off the camera when I was thinking I was talking about important stuff, and turning it back on while I was doing some fiddling and things that didn't actually matter. And I lost all the footage that I meant to take. It's now tomorrow. So I've pulled everything back off so I can actually show you the bits that are important. So the last part that I had did before undoing this, or before stopping recording and screwing everything up, was I mounted the hard drive here onto this little mounting plate, and I stuck it back into the onto the case. And I got my power cables sorted out. So you can see the SATA power cable is plugged in right here, and the actual SATA cable itself is plugged in here. Obviously the power runs back to the power supply, and then the SATA cable runs back through here. I routed it under, there's a little channel here that I routed it through, and then plugged it into the motherboard, into the SATA plug. One of the things I want to talk about that's really important is the great thing about working and building computers is everything is keyed correctly. So if I take this guy back off of here, let's actually take a look at it, because this is the interesting bit here. And this is mounted on here. You can really see, you can see the power cable here and the SATA cable here. And if we look at the SATA cable, you can see it's got this little L-shaped key. And if we look on the hard drive here, it's got a similar L-shaped key. And so these are keyed together. And most things within your PC, the power plugs, your data connections, all of these things are keyed in a way that they will only go into the slot that they are designed to go into. There are a couple exceptions to this. If you're building a new computer, some of the things for, say, powering a fan, or some of the other small jumper style connections on your motherboard may not be keyed, but most everything is keyed. And so a couple of things aren't keyed. The other thing where you need to really watch it is if you're putting it together, the little pin array that connects your power switch and reset switch and the hard drive light, those are all sort of in a very particular order. You can usually look in your motherboard manual and see exactly how those go, and that's a little tricky, but everything else is generally keyed, so you really don't have to worry about putting it together wrong. So this is all plugged in now, plugged back in, and we're going to jump into booting up the PC and looking at what happens when you boot up your PC for the first time after you've plugged this in, and how to configure Windows to recognize that this is in your PC now and ready to use for new storage. So we've now loaded Windows, and you're gonna open your desktop, and you're gonna go. Well, let's just ignore that warning. Let's go to this PC instead. Let's minimize that. All right. So we're now in Windows. We've booted up. We've finished the install. And you go in and you open up and you look in My PC and you don't see your new hard drive. I already had a C drive and a D drive. They were already there. I don't see my new hard drive that I just installed. And maybe for a moment, panic will ensue and you'll be scared. You'll think, hey, man, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe it's not working. It's not recognized. This is totally normal. Windows won't recognize it until you initialize the disk. So to do that, and you can't do it from this screen where you would expect, you need to go to computer management. The easiest way to do get there. So it used to be if you would have a My Computer icon in Windows, you'd right click that and go to manage. That's not usually in there by default, although I think if you right click on this PC and click manage, we'll get there. So this is computer management window. The easier way, I usually just type computer management in and let it find it for me. And then you want to come down to disk management. So in disk management, and it'll pop up and it'll say, hey, you need to initialize this to access it. Just use the default settings, GPT. We could go with MBR if we wanted to use this as a boot drive and do old stuff, but we're not going to. So we just click OK. And it says it is okay, and so it's disk 0. And now we need to, let's see if I remember what to do. Properties, nope. New simple volume, and we'll just say we can specify. We could split this up or do other things, but let's just take the defaults. It'll assign E drive to it. And this will allow us to format it. We want to use NTFS. We could use exFAT again if we were doing old stuff, but we're not going to, and click finish. That was it. And there it is. It popped up in there for us as a new drive. So again, well, I can't show you those steps anymore because, well, it's not an option, but that was it. So we can now see all 3 of our disks in here. And it pops up in here, and so we've got an extra 500 gigs. If I was, going to be installing more games on here, I'm sure I will. If I was to compare now these 3 drives that I have, my C drive, my OS drive, it's a RAID array. I actually have 2 M2 drives sitting in a RAID array. So it's super fast. So it's not a lot of storage, it's a gigabyte of storage. I have the 2, the 2, and you can see those in there. They're 2 2-terabyte drives, also in a RAID array. So it's a little bit faster than just a normal spinning disk. And then I have the now the new SSD drive in there. So C is probably my fastest drive, and that's where I want my boot. D is still pretty fast. That's where I put mass storage. Well, I store videos and add a lot of the games that maybe I don't access regularly. And then this E drive, the new drive, which really I only put it on here for this video, but I'll probably keep it on there and maybe use it as a scratch file for editing videos. All right, thanks a lot.